Story 1. It is very cold. If you bump into anything, you will feel it in your bones. Story 2. People expect you to sit in the worst seat, like the middle of the back seat of a car, the middle seat on a plane, or a booth at a restaurant. Story 3. I don't have this problem anymore. In my 20s, when I was a runner, the downside was having so little insulation. I was always cold throughout fall and winter. Story 4. One belt hole cuts off your circulation, and at the next belt hole your pants are falling down. Story 5. People pester you about needing to eat more. I am fine. I eat until I feel full and then stop. Story 6. I am not comfortable sitting on people's laps because I have a bony butt. Story 7. I get judged for being flat-chested and having no butt, but my body is built that way. No, eating burgers will not help me. Story 8. Every seam in my clothes or wrinkle in my sheets digs into my hip bones when I lie on my side in bed. When I was very skinny, it hurt to sit on any chair without a cushion. Honorable mention. People feel very comfortable discussing my weight, my presumed health, and what I should eat. Story 9. Probably my Filipino aunts harass me every Christmas. Laughing out loud. Story 10. I am underweight because of health issues, but most people do not know that when they first see me. I get a lot of "you're so tiny and how do you stay so skinny?" especially from older women who come from a generation where skinny equals good and must be achieved at all costs. I am not underweight from an eating disorder, but if you all keep commenting on my weight, I am going to develop one. It screws with my head sometimes, to be honest. If a chair lacks sufficient padding, I am in pain. A metal or hard chair back feels like a bruise on my spine, and I bruise easily because there is not enough padding to protect me. I cannot take stimulant medication for my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder right now because it suppresses my appetite and I cannot afford to lose any more weight. I am cold all the time. Clothes rarely fit right. I was denied telehealth psychiatric care because I am underweight and not under the care of a primary care doctor. I only wanted a refill for my antidepressant, which they had no problem filling the month before. Story 11. Being body shamed every day and told it is a compliment. Not able to sit on hard surfaces for long periods. Feeling cold when no one else is. Story 12. For context, I used to weigh over 300 pounds and now weigh about 155 pounds. I am a 41-year-old man and lost the weight naturally. I'm always cold. I used to shovel snow in shorts. When I was losing weight, everyone thought I was sick. I recently dropped a few pounds for rock climbing and everyone commented negatively. People assume I did not have to work for it. I hate being called lucky. I cannot move furniture like I used to. Despite being stronger now, I simply lack the mass. Clothes are frustrating. Long-sleeve shirts rarely have sleeves long enough. Pants are usually loose in the seat, and belts are necessary to keep them up. Chairs are uncomfortable. I have a long tailbone and most chairs curve upward at the back of the seat, so I have to slouch in almost every chair. I no longer float in water. I sink quickly. Story 13. I love eating and wish I could eat 5 times as much food without my body complaining. Story 14. That I am not a good chef, that you cannot trust a skinny chef, or that I use hard drugs. I look like a discount Skinny Pete. Story 15. I fell into a deep depression. I could not eat more than 1 meal a day, my clothes were falling off, and I could not look at myself in the mirror for months. I said I wanted to get better, but it felt impossible and only made me sadder. One of my sisters-in-law said, "Maybe I need to get into a depression too so I can lose this weight. At least you're not fat." I felt invisible, and her words confirmed what I believed, that I would never be loved or accepted for who I am. It seemed I could not talk to anyone about my mental state because they would say, "At least you're not fat." Story 16. Comments from people, friends, family, strangers. "You're too skinny. You look unhealthy. You need to eat more." As if I don't know? Fuck off. It's considered normal to pick on skinny people, but as soon as you pick on fat people, it's a big no. Story 17. My biggest complaint is how cold I am now. I lost around 70 pounds over the course of 6 months, and the winters are killer. I get cold so easily, and as someone who used to live for the cold seasons, I now dread them. Story 18. Not being able to sleep without a pillow between your legs because your bony knees keep knocking against each other. Being cold is worse. Story 19. Finding boots that fit your legs and do not topple over. Thank God for Steve Madden. Story 20. This is partially regional and not mainly a reflection of men's physical preferences. The social narrative is that skinny women are the most desirable, but when people say this, they usually do not mean size 2 skinny. They mean size 12 skinny, an average build. In my experience, most men actually prefer full-figured bodies with thick thighs, full arms, and large breasts over the slim bodies of Victoria's Secret models, which have slim thighs, skinny arms, and small breasts. Story 21. When you gain 5 pounds and suddenly everyone is really concerned about how fat you are getting, even though you are still 10 pounds underweight. Story 22. Where to begin? My pants are ruined. I wear 29 by 32 and need a custom-tailored pair of jeans. Never found in stores, rarely found online. The worst. When people wrap their finger around your wrist and say, "Whoa, I don't do that to you." This is for the tall lads and lasses. Have you ever sneaked up on someone so badly they figuratively defecate themselves from your 130 pounds just walking? Get some food in you. I eat for sustained calories, not for taste. I eat like a snake. Fuck you. Being so thin that you slither and slink through crowds and feel alienated like, oh, there's skeleton Skinwalker McGee doing his thing. For Halloween, my costumes are scarecrow, skeleton, or ruler. At least I'm packing schmeat. The only trade-off I know of. Story 23. My buttocks ache when I sit on hard chairs and benches because there is not enough padding. It sounds simple, but it is a problem when attending a sports game, sitting on benches, or camping. Story 24. I struggle with body dysmorphia. I feel like I need to be thinner and to work out more. I know I'm not fat, but I think I am. It affects everything, my diet and my routine. I am often cold. Story 25. There is downplaying and minimization of body shaming when it is not directed at someone who is overweight. Skinny people cannot even discuss the issues they face without some fat person making it about themselves and treating sympathy for body shaming like a fucking competition. Tell a skinny woman to eat a burger and nobody bats an eye. Tell a fat person to get off their ass or make healthier diet choices, and there will be an absolute uproar. The irony is that much of the skinny shaming I have experienced comes from people who are grossly overweight. You would think they, of all people, would sympathize with being shamed for one's body and not want anyone else to feel that way. Instead, they use people who are perceived as attractive as an outlet for their resentment at not being the beauty standard. It is not my fault that society treats fat people poorly. Insulting me will not make you any skinnier. Story 26. People always assume every problem is an eating disorder. I went to the doctor because I kept getting sick and losing weight. They sent me to a nutritionist. She noticed I had brought an iced tea labeled diet and asked me about it. I said I had not noticed and that all tea seemed low calorie, that this one was not special and it was just a marketing sticker. In her report, she claimed I had an eating disorder even though she did not discuss those concerns with me during the appointment. I wrote a strongly worded email to the practice, asking whether a person with an eating disorder would go to a doctor for help, since they would not want to be losing weight. They apologized and sent me to a gastroenterologist. Turned out I had celiac disease. Story 27. People keep hitting me with the same dumb joke. Haha. She needs a burger. Get some meat on those bones. Please shut up. Oh my God. I'm fine. Thank you. Story 28. Clothes are not made in my size. I have found only 2 shirts in my entire life that fit me properly. Pants in size 28 by 32 are almost non-existent. Story 29. No one takes my health problems seriously. Most people, including medical personnel, just laugh and say, "Laughing my ass off. Have you considered eating more?" I have been told that since I was a toddler, and I am so sick and tired of it. If I complain, people say, "You have it too easy. You are privileged. Shut up. My body is a biological failure. I would die to be fat, and yet I literally cannot gain weight." Story 30. The worst part of being skinny when you're young is getting fat when you're old. As a child, I got all my height early, and it was impossible to find pants that fit. If they fit my height, they were big enough to go around my waist twice. If I bought pants for my waist, they came up to my knees. Story 31. People are invading my personal space. Most people avoid touching or getting close to fat people, but because I am small, others repeatedly invade my personal space. Story 32. It feels wrong to be told you're pretty when you are constantly suffering from dizziness, pain, and getting cold more easily. But I'm pretty, so I should stay skinny, right? They start saying this when you are young, which makes it all the worse. Story 33. People assumed I did not know my own portion sizes. I am not super skinny anymore. I would say I am average for my frame, but when I was skinnier, people assumed I was taking more food than I could eat if I filled my plate. Then they would act shocked that I ate it all. It is strange that as a child I learned how to portion my food. Story 34. It's pretty great, other than when you're lying in bed and your kneecaps hit together. It hurts and it's hard to get comfortable. Story 35. A lot of people comment on your weight. I've been skinny my whole life, and people constantly tell me I need to eat more or ask if I have an eating disorder. I hate it. Another issue is clothes. I'm skinny and short and live in a country where there are not many options for petite girls. Most stores have clothes that are either too big, too long, or otherwise unsuitable, which makes every shopping trip extremely depressing. Story 36. It hurts to lie on your stomach because your hip bones are sharp. Story 37. People always act like you are not eating enough. Leave me alone. I am just built different. Story 38. Thin shaming is perfectly okay. It's all right to point out thin people's bodies publicly and make degrading comments, but when you do it to fat people, it's wrong. Story 39. This is probably going to be a niche one, but there is a weird thing that happens sometimes. If I go for a run or do heavy cardio, my ears will lose their popped feeling for some reason, and I have to spend the next hour repeatedly popping them to try to get them back into place. I sound strange when I talk because I am trying to keep my ears popped with the back of my tongue while having a conversation. Apparently, it has to do with the eustachian tubes, and being skinny increases the likelihood that it will happen. It is not dangerous, but it is very annoying, and I hate running because of it. Story 40. Observing how often thick goth mommies and big butts are put on a pedestal. Story 41. When I had more weight, sitting on hard surfaces was much easier. I also had good old-fashioned body dysmorphia. Right after I lost weight, a friend said she liked dad bods because they were soft and comfortable, and she casually made a comment that destroyed me. Sex with a skinny guy is like fucking on a sink full of dishes. That phrase haunted me for years. Then I met a woman who loves grinding on my hips and other bony places, so it's not nearly as bad. It never occurred to me that could be a thing. Story 42. I'm not that skinny anymore, but when I weighed 110 pounds, I lived in constant fear of being kidnapped because I was so petite and light. Story 43. As one ages, the skin wrinkles more quickly and the face becomes hollow. Catherine Deneuve said, at a certain age, you have to choose between your face and your ass. Story 44. People treated me like I was a drug addict rather than a teenager with an eating disorder. I was so depressed, and the stupid comments just made it worse. Story 45. Finding flattering clothes is the most common problem. If you are skinny and tall, you are often out of luck. Most fashion or runway clothes are designed for slim, tall people. Most off-the-rack clothes are for average bodies, and as the average waistline continues to grow, it becomes increasingly difficult to find clothes that fit well and are affordable. Medical garments are the worst. If you are thin but have a heart condition, suitable medical clothing is often one of the last things considered. Story 46. It seems to be more socially acceptable for people to comment on your skinniness than on being larger. The latter is called fat shaming. Story 47. Babies don't like being held by me as much. My chest is not soft and my shoulders are sharp. I once watched my tired baby cousin desperately try to find a comfortable way to rest his head on my shoulder while I was carrying him. That was sad. I try to compensate by rocking gently and singing lullabies. Story 48. Not having an ass. Story 49. People comment on how good I look now. I have lost weight because of medical issues, and it breaks my heart every time someone says I look good. I miss my healthy body, my confidence, and the way I used to look. Story 50. When I weighed 300 pounds and worked in a warehouse, I fell through a shelf and landed on my tailbone, breaking it. I did not know this until 30 years later, after I lost weight and weighed 165 pounds. Suddenly, whenever I sit or lounge in a chair, I experience severe pain because the bone appears to have healed as a protrusion. When I had the extra padding, it was not an issue. Story 51. I am skinny and 6 feet 6 inches tall. I need pants that fit the waist and reach below my ankles. Story 52. My doctor cannot determine why I lost weight and will not help me gain weight. Story 53. There is a lack of natural padding for sitting. Park benches are uncomfortable. Story 54. I am not really skinny, but as a 5 feet 10 inches man who weighs 150 pounds, I am definitely on the small side. For me, the worst part is never having any power behind anything I need to do. For example, when trying to turn a wrench on a very stuck bolt, my heavier colleagues can apply 300 pounds of force to the wrench with little effort. Moving furniture is no problem for them. I have to put everything I have into it. Story 55. I do not know if it is the worst part, but for some reason people do not hesitate to point out how skinny you are or tell you to eat a hamburger. It is quite the weight double standard we face. Story 56. I was always slim, but I did have an eating disorder when my body mass index was well below normal. I am 5 feet 10 inches tall. The comments from other women were horrifying. They ranged from asking if I had an eating disorder to telling me, "Stop sticking your fingers down your throat." That comment came from a customer at the shoe store where I worked when I offered to brace against a wedge so she could fit her foot into a shoe. Now I have a thyroid condition, Hashimoto's disease, and I am at the very beginning of treatment, so I am at the opposite extreme. No one says anything, but their looks say it all. Story 57. Half-sleeve shirts are not for us. That's why I always have to wear full-sleeve t-shirts. Story 58. At 23, I was skinny. At 32, I was skinny and 6 feet 2 inches tall. By 38, I was gaining weight. At 48, I was approaching 190 pounds. Today, at 58, I weigh 223 pounds. Story 59. When you turn sideways and stick your tongue out, you look like a zip. Story 60. I am often cold. Sometimes during the summer I wear hoodies. Story 61. Coworkers discuss behind my back what I have or have not eaten. Story 62. Getting cold easily. Being told you need to eat more, which is hard to do. Sitting for long periods causes soreness. Gaining muscle is difficult. Society accepts teasing people about their weight and for being skinny. Story 63. I was skinny until I was almost 23. For a year and a half, I have been working out and gaining muscle. Here are the top things I have learned as a man. 1. People often tell you to eat more. My mom used to complain that I was underweight, but doctors always said I was fine. 2. Clothes may not fit or look as good on you. People with higher body fat experience the same issue. 3. If someone close to you gets in good shape, people will ask why you are not doing the same. 4. Gaining muscle can be harder for some people. If you work out with friends, do not be discouraged when others increase their weights and seem to leave you behind. Story 64. I have to sit through all these Ozempic commercials. Maybe buffets? Most seating is industrial. Story 65. People taking up more of your space, for example, spilling over into your airplane seat. Story 66. I was waiting for this after I saw the worst part of being fat. For me, it is that I also have tiny breasts, so I look like a child at least 10 years younger than my age. People also assume I wear a size 0. What the heck? I sometimes skip periods if I do not eat enough in a month or if I exercise too much. Many people may not care about that, but healthy cycles are important. Story 67. Everyone says I do not eat and look sick, and they try to one-up me on physical strength. Story 68. People feel very comfortable commenting on your body. They're assuming they are complimenting you. It is just uncomfortable. If you make any disparaging comments about your own body, everyone is aghast. How dare you not feel confident? Story 69. Wow, you should eat a sandwich. Actually, I probably eat more than you do. Story 70. It has been a while since I was skinny, but everybody had to comment. Story 71. Anytime I feel insecure about my body, people immediately dismiss those feelings as complaining, "At least you're skinny." Yeah, thanks for letting me know my feelings are not valid. Story 72. When you are hungry and thin, you need food immediately. When you are hungry and larger, it feels different. I will pass out. Body Mass Index 12. Story 73. I was bullied at 12 and called an anorexic girl every day. I didn't have an eating disorder. It really hurt. Story 74. I hit my hips very hard, and there are only 2 millimeters of skin over the hip bones. Story 75. Growing up as a black girl, it was especially difficult not having the curves people expected. I heard comments like, "Most black girls have an ass." I dealt with loose underwear, saga leggings, and looking awkward in certain positions. I was told I needed to eat more every time I wore shorts because my legs are just bony, and as a child I was forced to eat more. I faced accusations of having an eating disorder. I could not confidently celebrate my body the way curvy people do because it was seen as mean girl vibes. People tried to push me around as a kid because of my size, and there was pressure to maintain the thinness I had when I was younger, since my waist became the only feminine thing about my body. Story 76. For me, it was the bullying. For context, I have a genetic disorder, and on top of other health complications, it meant I was chronically underweight. I still am. Trigger warning. Descriptions of bullying and mentions of eating disorders. I hit all my developmental milestones until age 7. After that, my height continued to increase, but my weight did not. By middle school, you could count every one of my ribs and vertebrae. The first time I undressed for gym class in the locker room at a new school, a girl who was already well developed for an 11 to 13-year-old looked over at me wearing only underwear, pointed, and shrieked so the whole room could hear, "Oh my God! Who let a little boy in the girls' locker room?" She then burst into laughter, and every single one of those girls laughed with her. I didn't realize they were laughing at me at first, but when it sank in, it completely destroyed my 11-year-old sense of self-worth. If it wasn't the little boy joke, it was calling me anorexic. For months this went on, and I was bullied mercilessly. I developed an eating disorder after that. I started binge eating to the point of making myself sick, and, unsurprisingly, I still didn't gain any weight. It took almost a year to get over it, after I was pulled out of school for defending myself against my bullies. You have to love the United States school system. This is not about bullying alone. It underlines a societal flaw where being thin is treated as the ultimate ideal. Fast forward to high school. I was feeling marginally better about myself. I only barely looked like a girl, or so I was told, and I was in the cafeteria trying to eat lunch. A couple of girls across from me talked to each other before noticing me and saying, "Oh wow, you're so pretty and skinny. Are you on a diet? What's your secret?" Picture a 14-year-old who has only just started puberty, weighing 90 pounds in full winter gear soaking wet, tall enough to pull off that heroin chic look that was all the rage in the 1990s and early 2000s. I wasn't wearing my usual layers because it was hot and humid. You could clearly see that I was rail thin. You could still use my protruding bones as a xylophone. Why she thought asking a clearly emaciated 14-year-old for dieting advice was appropriate, I'll never know. I explained that I'm not on a diet, that I'm actually very sick and can't gain weight. She, like many self-absorbed 14-year-olds with almost no empathy or self-awareness, said, "Oh, I wish. It must be so nice to not gain weight." Record scratch, freeze frame. You know that scene in American Psycho when Patrick Bateman brutally murders his colleague and says, "Try getting a reservation at Dorsia now?" That was me in my head. You want to know what happened next? Eating disorder number 2, electric boogaloo. If anyone treated an overweight person that way, there would be hell to pay. Yet it seems perfectly socially acceptable to treat someone at the opposite end of the weight spectrum the same way. I'm fine now, mentally anyway. I am still very sick physically. At almost 30, I am only 20 pounds underweight instead of 40, and I am happy with my body. Even so, every time someone makes a negative comment about my weight, my 11 and 14-year-old selves feel the urge to go find food to eat. When that happens, I remind myself that my doctors say my weight is fine where it is now, that it is okay, and I just breathe. Summary. Kids are assholes, bullying sucks, and don't make comments about people's bodies, especially their weight. If your reaction to someone telling you they are very sick and that is why they are thin is, gee, that must be so nice to not have to worry about weight gain, I wish I had a debilitating disease too. Maybe go back to preschool where they teach children how to be decent, empathetic people and start over. Story 77. People who feel entitled to comment on your size and weight. Story 78. Eating a large amount of food is noticeable. Suddenly, you have a food baby. Story 79. People say things like, "Why don't you eat more?" I eat an insane amount, laughing out loud. I am often cold and have to work out and build muscle to have a nice figure. Story 80. Wearing kids-size clothes because they fit, then seeing a 10-year-old wearing the same shorts. Story 81. People think you are fit and healthy, but you could have a disorder or simply underused muscles. Story 82. I'm 6 feet 4 inches and weighed about 165 to 175 pounds in high school and college. I got tired of people calling me skinny and telling me to eat more, so I started going to the gym every day. Now I weigh about 205 pounds and feel much better. Story 83. Not comfortable sitting on seats. Gets cold easily. Clothing is baggy and appears untidy. Story 84. I am freezing all the time. My house is set at 75 degrees and I am still cold. I have low blood pressure. If I stand up too fast, I feel like I am going to pass out multiple times a day. Story 85. Not skinny anymore, but still petite. It used to be difficult to find clothes that fit and matched my style or age. The worst part was always having to sit on someone's lap or on the armrest. The best part was no leg chafing, so jeans lasted longer until I gained weight. I donated them while they still looked almost new. I finally donated my dress labeled 14 years that only started fitting me when I was 20. Story 86. I was probably cold all the time. I had always been a rather large guy, not morbidly obese or anything, but a solid 250 pounds, give or take. When I hit my mid-40s, I started having health issues like high blood pressure and high cholesterol, so I got serious about dieting and working out and dropped to 170 pounds. The first winter after I lost all the weight, I was cold all the time. My wife started complaining that I was keeping the house miserably hot because I kept cranking up the furnace. I guess when I lost all the weight, I also lost my insulation. Story 87. Nothing retains my body heat. I am always cold unless I am in direct sunlight or the temperature is 85 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Story 88. Anemia, cold hands and feet, and constant nagging from other people to eat more even though that does nothing, especially if you have a fast metabolism. Other people assuming you have an eating disorder. Clothes labeled petite that do not fit and extra small. Sizes that are either too big or too small. If you are skinny with long legs, it is hard to find jeans that fit both leg length and waist. People staring at your body because you are skinny. Sometimes your body looks strange in clothes and nothing ever seems to fit. Story 89. Hard chairs. Whoever said, "You can never be too thin," never spent 90 minutes on a metal stool. Story 90. If you are tall, finding clothes that fit can be difficult. Sizing often assumes small means skinny and short, and large means taller and thicker. Story 91. Eating is more survival-based, and it's hard to add an extra layer. Every meal feels essential. Story 92. People are constantly underestimating you. There are few people whose assumptions I have not proven wrong. Story 93. Parts of my bones stick out, for example, my entire spine. It makes me want to vomit when I lean against a chair the wrong way. Story 94. Being told to eat more all the time, even when you have already eaten a lot. Story 95. Chronically cold legs and feet during winter are unbearable. Story 96. When I am cold, I have less strength to lift things. When I bump into things, they sting a bit because my nerves are more sensitive. Story 97. My butt hurts when I sit down. I bump into things more often by accident. I am too skinny right now and I am working on that. Story 98. In my experience, the worst part is knowing I will never be skinny enough. Even at my worst, when I was nearly hospitalized with a body mass index of 16, eating once a week and consuming nothing but water, I was still called fat. No matter how sick I became from being underweight, people still commented on my thighs and hips. They found any morsel of fat on my frame and told me I should lose it. That was the hardest part for me, and I was always cold. Could be 100 degrees Fahrenheit outside and I would shiver. Felt absurd. Story 99. When I was very skinny, my health suffered. I nearly lost my period, which led to crippling cramps so severe I sometimes fell down in public. I could not do sports. I would get dizzy immediately. I could not sit comfortably or lie on my stomach because my hips hurt, and I could not stand up without getting dizzy. The worst part was that my friend said it was admirable and wanted that for herself while I was struggling with how unhealthy I had become. Story 100. Being skinny does not mean being healthy. You can still have issues with cholesterol, blood pressure, or sarcopenic obesity, also known as skinny fat. Story 101. Everyone I meet is convinced that if I eat a few meals at their house, they will fatten me right up. Trust me, bro, if gaining weight were as simple as eating a different meal, I would be Mr. Universe already. Story 102. If you are very thin, you will be cold all the time. Story 103. People think they can comment on your weight. I have had multiple people ask me what size jeans I wear and make passing comments about it in general. I also cannot wear strapless clothes because my breasts do not hold them up. Story 104. The top 3 worst things are: 1. Feeling cold all the time. 2. Nutritional deficiencies manifesting in very bizarre ways. 3. Very mean body shaming from perverts. Story 105. When I'm overweight with a beard, I feel gross, but men do not mess with me. When I'm skinny and clean-shaven, even the biggest nerds think they can try me in public. Story 106. I'm always made to sit in the middle seat, the worst seat. I've even been asked to sit on people's laps when there were not enough chairs. I'm always the one designated to do tasks that involve crawling. Men often pick you up to show how cool they are. Story 107. I feel like I am going to have a heart attack when moving around or just existing. Combined with my picky eating and severe anxiety, I do not really want to eat sometimes, even my favorite foods. Is 5 feet 5 inches and 135 pounds fine? Story 108. I'm not skinny, but I've lost a fair amount of weight. When I sit on harder chairs, I notice my sit bones more because I've lost the padding on my butt. Story 109. People tend to spread out and fill the space you would otherwise occupy. On flights, my neighbors often take one look at me and decide that just because I am in the middle seat, I am not entitled to an armrest. Story 110. Everybody assumes you have an eating disorder. Doctors, teachers, and other students. People have mocked your body size for decades. You never feel normal because no one lets you forget that you look different. Story 111. You may have some muscle weakness. You can gain significant strength through practices like yoga and Pilates, but that does not necessarily make you look larger. Social criticism from people in communities with higher rates of overweight is also annoying. Story 112. I am cold all the time and bruise very easily. At night my feet get so cold that it is impossible to sleep. Story 113. The comments I get about not eating enough bother me. I actually eat very reasonably. I have never enjoyed feeling too full. It makes my stomach hurt and leaves me feeling nauseated. Being a glutton has never been within my comfort zone. Those remarks have always been annoying. Story 114. Buying super skinny jeans and still needing a belt. People are always telling you to gain weight or eat more. Story 115. Everybody seems entitled to comment on what I eat. If I eat too little, they say it is unhealthy and that I should eat more. If I eat more, they say they cannot understand how I eat so much and do not gain weight. I told some friends, and they have started to notice the comments I receive. Story 116. The people who told me to eat a sandwich said I had no butt and should gain weight. Story 117. As a fat guy, I am playing the world's tiniest violin for you all. It is like asking what the worst part of being born rich is. Story 118. Having to convince the wind every day that I am not a kite. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.